Hey, what's up? My name is Mac, and I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, and I'm going to be continuing my series on different mountaineering information to help newbies getting into mountaineering and kind of pass along information that I've learned over the course of the last 4 years of the sport and things you might need to know. Now, unfortunately, mountaineering comes with a pretty high entrance fee in that the purchasing of the equipment. You can rent a lot of stuff, but if you want to do it regularly, then you're probably going to have to eventually make an investment in a pair of boots, probably multiple pair of boots, unfortunately, especially if you want to go more high altitude mountaineering. They're generally two different kinds of boots. And I want to preface that a lot of mountaineering, particularly non-technical mountaineering and particularly non-glacial associated mountaineering, even if it's cold, you may not even need a mountaineering boot. So if you're just starting off and you haven't really done a lot of hiking in mountains like the White Mountains, even in the winter, there's probably a lot of things you can get away with a really good pair of Gore-Tex boots with micro spikes. But in terms of more traditional mountaineering, you're probably going to need a pair of mountaineering boots in some fashion. And then eventually you're probably going to need, if you want to go to high altitude mountaineering, a warmer pair of mountaineering boots. Now I have with me 3 different pairs of mountaineering boots. 2 of them are mine and one of them is actually my brother's. And so I'll highlight that my brother is actually a broke grad student, so he had a very low income right now. And hopefully when he graduates from grad school, he'll generate a higher income and be able to make a better investment for purchases in the future. But in the meantime, he really didn't want the fact that he didn't have an income to impede his ability to actually do some mountaineering, especially unguided with myself. And so we found this boot online for about $32. The boot was probably a rental, but it's in tremendous shape. My brother is a size 13 shoe, so he needed a size 14 mountaineering boot, which they don't come around a lot. And so when we saw this purchase, we were very quick, and I was very happy with it because it's performed exceptionally well. We did buy an external new liner for this boot, and again, this is what's called a Koflock boot. They were very popular in the late 90s and the early 2000s when they were pretty, high-end technology at the time. But currently the advancements in the more synthetic materials have really made way for a lot of new technologies that are generally lighter, a little bit more nimble, and keep your feet, what I understand is actually a little bit warmer. But plastic boots can definitely work for a long time. And one of the benefits to them is they're very durable. So despite this being a rental, it was in tremendous shape. And then he's banged it up against rocks. He's climbed Mount Washington with it a few times, and it's held up tremendously well. And as we're looking at possibly doing Denali in the future, this would be a boot option that he could turn to with an overboot on it. So I'll just say very quickly, overboots are something that goes over the boot and you have to put a crampon over that. But again, that's another video for another day. So there are generally 2 categories of mountaineering boots. There are double boots, which means there's an external boot, as you can see with the plastic, with an internal liner. This boot, which is the La Sportiva Spantic, also has an internal liner, which means it has a boot that comes out of this boot and that you put on, and then you can put them both on together. The goal of the double boot is to keep your feet exceptionally warm, similar to a layering system like you wear on your body. And then there are single boots. Single boots are sort of one boot. There is no internal liner, and they're generally regarded as a little bit more nimble and kind of that nice between, so they do keep your feet warm. A lot of people opt for something like this for a mountain like Mount Rainier. But even if you, especially if you go for an early season, you might have to opt for some type of double boot as well. There are several guide companies that recommend you use a double boot, especially for early season Mount Rainier, even other mountains as well. And so ultimately, what boot you choose is kind of to your discretion. The benefit is there are a few brands out there, Scarpa, Loa, all kinds that make really good products, and my advice would be to try them on. Unfortunately, if you don't live in a place with a high volume of, mountaineering stores, then you might be limited on your ability to try boots, and you kind of end up purchasing them and sending them back. I know that's really difficult and kind of difficult to navigate or to sort of front those costs. But again, you have to think about this as a purchase. The reality is, even people that want to mountaineer all the time, they're lucky if they mountaineer 200 days out of the year, which is a lot. And even then, you're probably not going to wear these boots out that quickly. They'll probably last you for a couple different years. Most of us, unfortunately, we are relegated to doing, weekend stuff and 1 or a couple trips a year. So these boots will last a long time, particularly if you buy really nice. I would say that the difference is that, some boots have a full shank, which means that this boot at the bottom doesn't bend at all. So it's very, and then other boots have like a partial shank, meaning that there's a little bit of bend in the boot. What boot you choose, there'll be pros and cons to it. The ones with a lesser of a shank will be more nimble and more flexible and be a little bit easier in terms of general walking. Having a full shank gives you a little bit more consistency in your steps when you're breaking into glaciated peaks. And so it's kind of all personal preference in many regards, but I would just say make sure you pick a boot that is going to be warm enough for the objectives that you want to achieve, as well as understand that you may have to make other purchases in the future. Regarding all of these boots, this is the one that's definitely the most expensive one that I purchased. These two I got for a pretty significant discount, but I will be wearing this on Aconcagua just because the double boot is going to adequately keep my feet warm during that objective. I do want to make one other thing regarding mountaineering boots, just to make it not so complicated, but just so you understand. And that is these. I'll do a whole video on ski mountaineering and skimo. This is a ski mountaineering boot. It has for the technical bindings. The reality is if you want to do mountaineering, it may be prudent for you to start thinking about also climbing with utilizing a ski system. The benefit of that is coming down is significantly easier on your knees if you're a really good skier. And also it can make the experience a little bit more fun for some people, because skiing for most people is a little bit more fun than just walking downhill. So again, the advancements of technology, a lot of people will end up using skis, climbing up, and then only using this boot to mountaineer. So you can see that these have like more rigid sort of bottoms, different than a ski boot, than a traditional ski boot, to let you kind of dig steps in the snow. They also come out with these shanks to where they can have a little bit of bend to them to make it walking a little bit easier. But again, it's all personal preference at the end of the day, and there's a lot to boots, but my advice would be to make an investment on some type of boot that's going to get majority of the jobs done that you want. What I personally went with was the La Sportiva Nepal. I think this might be the Nepal Evo. It's sort of a great all-around boot, but it's certainly not appropriate for a high altitude mountaineering objective, which is why I had to go for a double boot. I do have ideas of possibly getting a triple boot for eventually hopefully going to Denali, but I haven't relegated my decision to making that call yet. There are several people that have worn Spantics on Denali with an overboot system as well. So again, if price is a big factor for you, I would recommend getting a really good investment in a single boot, but with the understanding that if you want to pursue high altitude mountaineering objectives, you're probably eventually going to have to get some type of double boot at the minimum.